Bam! MC is in the house. What's going on, folks? My name is Justin Garcia, also known as Master Chim, and welcome to the Warrior Stream. I am here every Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time, usually taking a topic, doing some deep diving on it, and having a good time while doing it. I always appreciate when you guys join me as well. Before we get into today's topic and conversation, just want to take care of the things that I must, which number one, the email. The Master Chim letter is my free daily email newsletter. It is, that I mentioned, free. If you're interested in getting it and you are not yet getting it, go to masterchim.com/email. Right now, I'm streaming on a couple of different platforms. Every single one of those platforms should have a link in the description, with the exception of X, which if you're on X and you're watching, masterchim.com/email, sign up for that. I've been having some hurdles. Everybody's been having some hurdles with emails these days. The email platforms like, Hotmail and Google via Gmail and whatnot, they tend to switch the game, and just change the game on a dime and on a moment's notice, and provides an obstacle for a lot of us that get out these emails on a regular basis. So if you do sign up to the email, do me a favor and not only confirm the email, which I've since introduced a confirmation email, but also save the email address as a contact. That way your email platform won't get all paranoid and think that somebody's trying to convince you to burn the world or something, whatever the case is. But aside from that, there's a bunch of other stuff there. I keep myself busy. Those of you guys that have been watching me for a few years know that I own a martial arts school in the Bronx, New York. I live in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. My 4 kids, my wife, every day there's an adventure, to something going on. I try to stay creative. You can't consider yourself to be creative if you do not create anything. And to that point, I look to create as much as I can. I think those of you that find my stuff at some point, you realize that there are things that resonate in me with you, and things that I am not. And that's part of the allure also of me and my stuff. I am not a 25-year-old giving marriage counseling on Instagram. I am not somebody running ads on how he's going to make you $1 million while he's still living in his mother's house. I am not one of these people that talks about, how to be healthy and fit when he's putting makeup on, before he makes a video, and everything that he does is scripted. There's a lot of power and influence and persuasion by keeping ourselves, at a high level of production, controlling everything that we say and do and the way that we're perceived. I understand this dynamic. I teach this dynamic, but I will not subscribe to that lifestyle when it comes to doing the things that I do. As a result of that, I tend to be a little bit more open and honest about the things that I discuss, and sometimes I pay the consequence for that and my ability to reach a larger audience via the algorithms of these various platforms. Those of you that are on my email list know that I go in a hell of a lot deeper on those than I do on these videos, which is why I'm always telling people to make sure that you're on it. But regardless of that, I am somebody who is never attached to materialistic assets. I'm not somebody who is ever going to be held hostage by the alliances that are responsible for my various revenue streams. I'm going to be me, and I don't give a fuck what anybody says about it. I consider myself to be a loyal ally. I'm somebody who I would say is loyal, and I define a loyal person or a loyal ally in this context as somebody who sort of puts himself in a sort of a self-imposed debt whenever somebody does something for him. I'm very conscious of who I allow to do favors for me, because I am compelled to create that reciprocity. That is something that is embedded in me, ingrained in me, is how I was raised, maybe how I was designed, a combination of the two. But as it stands, I only try to surround myself. Well, the intent, I should say, is to surround myself with loyal people also. You can't know if somebody's loyal if they've never been through anything. We've heard the phrase, it's old wisdom, this concept of a fair weather friend. Well, what is a fair weather friend? It's somebody who's great in great times, but often terrible in terrible times. So you really don't know the depth and the value of somebody's mettle, somebody's worth as an ally if you've not seen them in those bad times. And anybody that lives life as an adventure, not as this sort of monotonous, let me be as safe and healthy as I can when I die type of mindset. If you're somebody that gets after it and somebody tries to discover new things about himself and about the world you're surrounded by, you are going to have those tough times. There's nothing more beneficial in those times than to share that with somebody that knows that your win is their win, that their win is your win. There's something special in that. Our modern society doesn't really support that. It doesn't incentivize that. Our modern society doesn't want to see men get to the point where they're self-sufficient. Well, one of the things about being self-sufficient is a man doesn't rely on other people's input to determine the value of who he is to himself. If you need my resources in order to survive, you need me to tell you the value of who you are as a man. You cannot call yourself a good man if I'm the one who's controlling all the resources, and I refuse to give you those resources unless you bend the knee, unless you follow my design for what your life's supposed to be. I remove your ability to have an intimate, powerful relationship with yourself if I make you addicted, if I incentivize your reliance and addiction to my provision for resources. That's why, first and foremost, men need to understand you are not your circumstances. You are not your environment. You are not your ecosystem. You are not even the collection of assets and worth and value that you've accumulated over the years. You're a consciousness and a relationship with that consciousness in real time, beat to beat, day to day, month to month, etc. You're not somebody that is going to be connected to somebody else's mission in a way that's ever going to be truly loyal to you. The alliances that I have, every single one of them represents an arc of overlap between my mission and my ally's mission. So long as that overlap is sustained and is valuable, then there is not a reason to anticipate it not continuing. However, I've been around the block in my 49 years enough to know that it is foolish to think somebody will be loyal to you because you've managed to invest so much time, energy, and resources in them. It's not the way it works. Loyalty is an investment, not a debt. If you've ever helped somebody in your life and they didn't reciprocate, shame on you for thinking they were supposed to reciprocate as a matter of, just receiving the help that you've given them. Somebody accepting the help that you're offering does not indebt them to some sort of reciprocity or some sort of connection and commitment to doing something with you in the future. That is not the way it works. That's what contracts are for. We want to be able to surround ourselves with people that, by definition, by who they are at the core of their identity, anything that you invest in them, they self-impose a debt and they want to reciprocate it to you. You get enough people doing that, that's where strong tribes are born. I want to get into today's topic of weak men because, oh man, there are some weak men going around, and there's going to be some tribalnomics language here. There will be some much more accessible, just logical language here. But it starts off with, who are you in the trajectory of your efforts in your life? Are you somebody that thinks you're supposed to be more? Are you somebody that spends his every waking moment trying to reduce the threats to the status quo? In other words, you spend every day trying to hang on to a life that nobody told you you were in control of or in possession of to begin with. You do not own the day. You do not own your house. You don't own your land. You don't own anything that you think you own. All those things that you think you own, you are in the middle of an arc. At what point of that arc, or you are somewhere on an arc of an alliance with that thing. That arc began at some point. That arc will end at some point. Having a mindset that respects that process has us build a relationship with gratitude for the things that we have. A very, very, I would say, prominent, common feature in weak men is an entitlement to the reality that they enjoy. Somebody owes something to them is a very common thought process for the weak man. There's somebody who has never built a relationship with the process of bettering himself. They've never traversed through enough obstacle to see the merits of that process in and of itself. So they look at everything they have that they have as a result of somebody giving it to them. And if they were to lose it, they assign the blame to somebody who must have taken it away. That entitlement permeates every corner of their relationship with their reality. They think somebody's supposed to provide for them. To be weak is a luxury in modern society. We've never seen so many weak people in the world. Why? Because we've never experienced so much surplus. And that symptom of surplus, the weakness that is endemic in the modern Western man, is a testament to an entitlement. This expectation of a sort of default base level of reality that is provided for an individual. I was talking with my mastermind group this morning. We had a great talk, and one of the topics that came up was the relationship that individuals have with depression, and the depression that individuals have being a story that they're telling themselves that's based on the reality they see as opposed to the reality that they expect. I've used before the example of, during the Great Depression, the stock market crash, there were stories of men killing themselves because they've lost their wealth. And I made the observation there were individuals who didn't want to live any longer because they were reduced to a level of wealth that most people on the planet had never even experienced one day in their lives. They told themselves they were entitled to this reality. They told themselves that the life that they were supposed to live required this base level of assets. They defined the very value of their life as an adventure that is lived with the accumulation of these material resources at hand. If they go, then what's the point of it all? They would tell themselves. Depression is a bad story. There's always a better story to be written. Well, the thing is, when you're in the moment, and I use this example this morning, like I squat a lot of weight, right? I'm pretty strong in the squat lift. Any strength that I have in a squat is really the consequence of all the time I spent under a heavy bar, being uncomfortable and learning how to literally push through the resistance. The problem with being under the bar is people can understand the context. It's a context that people can get and say, okay, I get it. I could maintain the observer's perspective in this relationship of lifting weights. So I see, okay, this is going to suck for a couple of moments, but once I put it back on the rack, I'll be fine. And because I've exposed myself to that repetition or that process in general, I'm going to have strength that's going to accumulate over time. People could understand that because they can get this observer's perspective. But oftentimes the people that walk around depressed are people that cannot get that observer's perspective. They're in the story. They don't know that they're living a story. They don't know that the story that they've built is one that they're responsible for. They don't even know that they have the opportunity, the power even, to make a better story. There's so many examples of this I have in my past, so many times where I'd have to learn some hard lessons. I'd have to experience some sort of loss. And what I can say is the thing that has allowed me not only to traverse those obstacles myself, but in turn be able to transfer this process to people that I coach is the ability to control that story. The name of today's talk is, weak men will always grow weaker. Well, there's a reason for that. If somebody does not have the ability to defend himself, let's just say, I'm using this as an example. And he is physically assaulted because he went to this particular supermarket. Parking lot, got his ass kicked in the parking lot. When a man walks away from that kind of experience, there are two main reactions he could have. Number one is I need to learn how to fight. I need to learn how to defend myself. I need to carry a weapon. I need to be better prepared for that scenario. That's one reaction. That is I would say, the historically functional reaction. The people who are alive today, it's because their ancestors opted for that choice in those types of situations. But the other kind of person says, I should never go to the supermarket again because there's people that beat you up in the parking lot. Those are the weak men. Those are the men that refuse to take the observer's perspective on who they are as an individual and how equipped they are to deal with the circumstances of a natural, normally lived life. There are some people who cannot get past the point of even being functional because they get so obsessed with avoiding issues, with avoiding problems, with avoiding just the normal bumps and bruises of living life, that they look to make their surrounding and their environment smaller. They look to stay away from this and avoid that. And you don't want to go there and you don't want to do this, because of the potential consequence. And what winds up happening is they design an entire life that exists in a small box. And the rest of their life, they live in this small box, this small life, and they become a small individual as a result of it. We know that overcoming resistance is the thing that makes us stronger. We know that traversing through the muck is what gives us the strength to continue to do so. On today's thumbnail, I put it was an image of a guy, laying down in mud. And there's a point where drowning in mud is sort of what you see modern weak men doing. They're in a circumstance that is absolutely dangerous and is absolutely a threat, but only if you refuse to use your inherent capabilities to navigate and traverse them as a threat. There is somebody, like you could drown in 6 inches of water if you keep your face in the 6 inches of water. It's not that you can't drown in 6 inches of water. It's who's the fucking guy and what are the circumstances that one would drown in 6 inches of water. There are so many problems today in society that people are experiencing in a universal sense. Maybe the applications change, but in a universal sense, the problems of, okay, how do I find food? How do I make sure that my family's safe? How do I surround myself with people who are going to help me? Like these are universal type issues that men face. But there are men who are in a situation where they are drowning in the easiest navigated of those situations in this modern society. Oh, I lost my job. Well, where is it? What do you mean you lost it? Let's go find it. Oh, no, I got fired. So you didn't lose your job. You got fired. All right, get another job. Yeah, but this is the one that, there goes the story again. As it stands right now, you don't have a job. You know what people who don't have jobs should do? Find a job. Yeah, but I can't believe this one guy, the way that, what the fuck are we even talking about? You see, a man who understands the process of climbing the ladder, the man who accumulates obligations, right, and connections, accumulates alliances filled with people who rely on him, he knows he cannot be so foolish and reckless as to waste his time telling himself stories. But in modern society, you can get away with that and then some. We have a society that will actually reward you for being a victim. We have a society that will reward you for being lazy. We have a society that will actually reward you for telling yourself disempowering stories. look at the social programs of most modern countries. I grew up in an environment where many people that I knew, some even related to, were experts at manipulating these systems, these mama bear take care of people like their children type programs, where somebody comes over from the city, you get the men out of the house. Somebody goes and gives you the opportunity to apply for welfare. You make sure that you pay attention to where the addresses you're using are. Maybe you lie about your age on a form, knowing that there's really no checks and balances that's going to hold you accountable. Like there are all these different things that are in place to help people who need help. But it becomes, at that level of scale, it just becomes another resource to be exploited. I was once talking to a buddy of mine, retired SEAL, talking about, if the trucks stop running, if the supermarkets don't have food, and, what are the things that would happen. And, one of the things he pointed out, because me and my ignorance at the time was like, well, I guess, a lot of people will be hunting. I live in Pennsylvania with deer all over the place. And he said, no, that's not going to work. And I asked why. And he said, I give it 3 months, and everything's going to be hunted out. Like everything's going to be done. There's not going to be an animal alive in these woods in 3 months if the food stopped coming. And I didn't realize that, but yeah, that's what winds up happening. There are systems in place to make sure that it doesn't happen. And I understand that in that context, but the context of, shit hits the fan scenario, I never really connected those dots. And years ago, he helped me, modify and improve my perspective on that. But when I look at people who will look at, these government programs, these mama bear programs, and they say, well, they need to be there for the people who need it. And, so of course, some people would take advantage of. It's like they don't get it. This is a resource that is always going to be exploited because there is no checks and balances that are going to hold people accountable. I don't want to deep dive down that tangent, too much further. But the point of it is, when you give a man something that up until that point he had always had to work for, why would you ever expect him to work again? Weak men will always grow weaker. Well, why is that? It's because they are not forced through circumstance to change their philosophy. Throughout history, when a man assumed a weak philosophy, he died. Right? You look at tribal societies hundreds, not thousands of years ago, like being exiled from the tribe was a death sentence. But that's exactly what would happen if you were an individual who wasn't pulling your weight, who wasn't doing your fair share of work. Because at that point, you were a liability. So groups of individuals who are fighting every day to survive, they can't afford pets. But that's exactly what people are. These people that want to be taken care of by the surplus of the group. You're a pets. Anybody that buys their food, pays their rent, keeps their lights on, pays their bills to some extent with government subsidized money, like you have a part-time job as a pet. That's why weak men will always grow weaker, because as society, in this aquarium, of Western society, we have incentivized these programs. We literally pay people to be weak. They say the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, the squeaky person gets the money in this society. Why would we not expect that to happen? I know personally people who are now in their 5th generation in the projects. 5 generations of a family in the projects. That's not what the projects were for. Or maybe they always were for that, but that's certainly not what they were sold on. There are always going to be people, and this is something that was hard for me to accept, admittedly. It was hard for me to accept that some people aren't going to make it. There's a tendency, especially from a position of leadership, that you don't want people to be You don't want people to fail under your leadership. You don't want it to be looked at by yourself. You don't want to look back on it and say, I let this person down. I've always wanted to be a good leader, and I was not always a good leader. Many years I was a very tyrannical leader. The motto was, I'm going to help you whether you like it or not. That's the motto of the benevolent tyrant. But you want to look at people and you want to say, I'm going to help them. But there are people that you realize that are not only beyond your ability to help, but are beyond help in its entirety. Sometimes you got to let people go. Sometimes that's the last bit of help you can give them. The ultimate accountability of being cut off. I had a talk recently with one of my coaching students, and he had a buddy that's going through some struggles, some substance abuse struggles. And he wanted some help on how to help him. Wanted some advice. Wanted me to offer some options as I saw it. And I told him, I said, maybe you should give him the gift of accountability. Oh, what do you mean? He asked. And I said, well, there was a point where the two of you, got something out of the alliance. Then he stopped paying his end of the alliance, and you kept on giving him yours because it didn't really cost you anything. It's called a commensal alliance. Your synergistic or mutualistic alliance devolved into a commensal relationship. That's where he gets the benefits, but doesn't cost you anything, so you don't stop it. But here's the thing about commensal relationships. They will always devolve into parasitic ones. And at this point, this particular coaching client of mine, his friend was a parasite in his life. His friend was costing him resources. And to add insult to injury, there was also the entitlement that his friend shared with him for it. You owe this to me. That was the mindset. And I told him there's only one way to deal with a parasite. Well, get rid of him? I'm not going to say get rid of him. It might wind up being that, but and I'll fill you guys in. Here's the insight on how you deal with a parasite. You set the criteria of the relationship you're willing to engage in, and then you let them self-select. It's a little bit of an ultimatum. It's a little bit of a my way or the highway, but you say it in a way that makes sense. You say it wholeheartedly. You don't say it emotionally. You just let them self-select. But part of giving them that ability, setting that criteria and letting them self-select, is you need to be willing to let them walk away. Sometimes walking away from them is you walking instead of them. Sometimes it's leaving them somewhere. And you need to understand that of your available options, that's the only one that you got that's going to work, if any of them are. I've had quite a few friends over the years become addicted to various substances. And some of them get their shit together. Some of them don't. But whether they do or they don't, that has absolutely nothing to do with the people who rely on me and the people that I've obligated and in some cases owed myself to be taken care of. People rely on me. It doesn't mean that I'm not there for friends, but if somebody insists on running a weak protocol and a weak formula, they have the ability to do so. Let me get to some of these questions here. Guys, when you write comments, oh man, I appreciate them. But the more you write them in question form, the easier it is for me to read them and answer them. Because sometimes I go off on one of these things and I come back and check, and there's always comments that I don't understand the context of. All right. First, let me say what's up to everybody. Jesse, Corey, Yarn Saxa, what's up? Johnny, Sean, Cherrytown Vibe. Jamie, what's up? Monk, what's up? I think there's two monks. We got two monks here. Monk Evil One, and Evil Monk. Is that the same person? Is this like a father or son thing? But what's up to both monks? I said what's up to Aaron. All right. So let's get into some comments here. All right. So Sean says, wait, you're not 25? I am 25. I'm just not only 25. Cherry Top Vibe says that bar is heavy the first time, every time. That's right. The pain of progress. All right. So Aaron writes, so the princess and I are leaving to hang out with a couple of friends before your show is over. Just wanted to share a quote I saw this morning because it reminded me of you, and you probably shared it before, but if not, I hope you like it. You cannot call yourself peaceful unless you are capable of great violence. If you are not capable of violence, you are not peaceful. You're harmless. That, I believe, is a Jordan Peterson quote, which is a take on the Nietzsche quote. Something like, I often laughed at those animals who thought themselves good because they were born with no claws, paraphrasing somewhat. But it's absolutely right. It's the same reason why mercy could only be shown by the strong, right? If you are somebody who considers yourself to be merciful, but you are weak, what is your mercy worth? Right? You're a walking bluff. There is no threat that you represent, right? It's like only the strong can forgive. Sean says, not only do we have a surplus of subpar entertainment, junk food, and superficial socializing, but we also have surplus of excuses we can make for ourselves. There's never been a greater time in history where it has been easier to use excuses and still be able to stay alive. And it's a lack of accountability that's embedded in a system of surplus. It's like we don't know that what we're doing. And I'll give you an example. Like sometimes in marketing, right? One of the things that I'll do with my business clients is we'll do split testing, and we'll see what a given marketing campaign, its effectiveness by comparing it to something else. And maybe we'll change the headline, or we'll change the color scheme, or we'll change something else. And then we'll see, numbers need to be at a certain level of exposure, but we'll see which one the market responds to more than the other. And this is reality giving us a level of feedback that allows us to adjust. Well, in society, we don't have that feedback. We don't have that exposure to that authentic, transparent feedback because there is so much surplus. Just recently, LeBron James's son just got drafted by the Lakers into the NBA. And here's a kid who wants to play in the NBA, got into the NBA. Obviously, he got into the NBA because his dad is LeBron James. If somebody just looks at him and his skill set and says this is an NBA level talent, they'll probably be right and wrong at the same time. They'll technically be right because there he is in the NBA. But when looking to use that as sort of representative of what the average NBA talent is, obviously it will be very inaccurate. Or the surplus in Bronny James, the son, in his life is the influence of his father. So the surplus that he enjoys basically insulates him from the transparent feedback from reality. This is what happens, right? So when we have the surplus that we currently enjoy in society, you got to understand we're getting a lot of false signals because we don't have that authentic, accurate level of feedback. There were times where if you didn't know how to find food, you starved to death. Like that's how it works, right? Nowadays, like you can go to any urban environment in the country, if not the world, and you will find fat people begging for money for food or fat people begging for food. I once did a 9-day water fast. For 9 days, all I had was water. I guarantee you, none of these homeless people have ever gone 9 days without eating in a modern society. I could be wrong, but I think it's pretty safe money to say that they probably haven't. Because somebody's always going to help them. That's the surplus in which we live. Cherrytown Vibe says, even while being homeless, there are males who will stay under the government and do nothing. Yeah, and you know what? To add, and I say this about antidepressants also. There's the concept of the reachable rung. I don't fault anybody for grabbing on the first rung that they could reach and using it to stop the fall, to stop the descent. And you hold on to that rung, but it is imperative that shortly thereafter you re-begin the climb. You restart the climb. People that are on antidepressants, I don't, my doctor says I need them. And maybe you do, but all I'm willing to say is you need them right now. If you need them at all, you just need them right now. Yeah, well, how am I going to get off them? I don't know. That is the journey that you need to figure out. Because all I'm saying is I'll never advocate for a mindset that says you're going to need them forever. As if these things fix you, as if you're broken. You're not broken. You're just in a position that you have to traverse out of. Movement will get you out of this. If you tell yourself you're unable to move, then you're not. Anybody that says, oh, it's not worth it. Well, they're selling themselves on the idea. And the story that they write will follow that. Right? So there is something of a reachable wrong. Cherrytown Vibe had said, there are males who will stay under the government and do nothing. Like, listen, if you need help and help's there. I once had a conversation with a good friend of mine who said that she was applying for government subsidized healthcare. But she felt like a loser doing it. She felt like, I feel like a bum, like I should. And I said, listen, let's understand something. The government takes our tax money and does whatever the fuck it wants with absolute no regard for who we are and how much more effectively we could use that money that they take. If you are using it to make sure that your health is okay, if you are using some process, like I am the last person that's going to pass judgment who chooses to take care of themselves and their family members in any way possible. And I can never judge somebody for trying to do better for them and their family. The criticism that I have is waiting for those people who choose to not move, who choose to not work, who choose to just feed off the system. Right? But hardworking men and women who want to leverage some program that an illegal is going to get just by fucking showing up at the door, no. My judgment isn't for those people in those times. Evil Monk asks, what about disabled veterans living on compensation for the injuries of their service to the country? Well, if there's ever going to be an exception, that's going to be one of them. We don't have a society that respects and honors the warrior class amongst us. You got to understand that there are scopes and scales of society, tribes more generally, whereby there is no personal relationship. So there needs to be a cultural relationship. I will do things for my cousin because he's my cousin, not because of what he believes in, what he's done in his life, what he stands for. Like, those are all potential alliance builders. But the fact that he's family sort of has him circumvent all of that criteria, and I'm going to look out for him. Well, as a tribe grows, getting to the point of specialization, one of the original programs that I put out was the Loyalty Matrix. And the Matrix is usually a plotting apparatus or device that allows us to see where a given snapshot of time is based on two different values. Well, the two values in the Loyalty Matrix was time, meaning the timeline since its inception, and specialization, right? When can we specialize, right? A group of 5 people, right? Let's say 3 men and 2 women. Shit hits the fan. Everybody might have to fucking pick up a gun, a sword, a stick, what have you. It's time to cook. Everybody might have to participate. It's time to put up shelter. Everybody might have to participate. There's not a lot of specialization because of the size of the tribe. As the tribe continues to grow, it can now create specialized roles. And these people will still have access to the benefits of the whole, even though their job is specialized. There was a time where you didn't have to hunt and you could still partake in the food that the hunters brought back because you were filling your role at the level of specialization in your given tribe. When we look at people who are in the military these days, these people are supposed to be taken care of. Why? Because they bypass their ability to take care of themselves to fill that specialized role for our country. So of course they should be taken care of. Somebody can get a job at the fucking telephone company and he gets sick or he gets injured. He's got health insurance. He's got something taking care of him. Yet people that fight in the military who have volunteered, where they're going and what they're doing is a separate conversation. But these people signed up, signed their autonomy away, and dedicated themselves to the military. Of course, they're supposed to be taken care of as a result. And those people that are living on the compensation, I'd question that assessment of it. They're getting money because of their disabilities is one thing, but living off the compensation, like, I would say everybody should be doing their most to be productive and be creative. I have a school, I have a coaching business, I've written a couple of books. Like, these are all ways that I've just been creative. Some of these things make more money than others. Sometimes these things are great revenue generators. Sometimes it's just great to see my creative idea come to life, and there's very little compensation during the process. But the whole thing is, a man should never stop being a man. I have a buddy of mine that I grew up with, got into a car accident, had a lawsuit going on. Stopped playing sports. He stopped lifting weights. He stopped training martial arts. He stopped doing a whole bunch of things. Why? Because he couldn't let anybody see him doing those things. Because if he waited 2-3 years, maybe he had a check coming. I don't understand how somebody takes 2-3 years like that of his life just for granted. It's like, holy shit, you could have taken those 2-3 years and become a completely different person. Never mind the money. You could have made yourself into somebody who could make that thing in a month, could make that thing in a week. Anything's possible. But people shrink to their circumstances. They get nervous, and it's risk aversion. Right? Oh, I don't want to try that. Why? Because what if I lose? It's like, what if you lose? Like, what if you win this? I hate this job, but I can't leave. It's too secure. The only thing worse than losing if you try something new is winning the thing you have. Giving 20, 30, 40 years of your life to a job that makes you miserable, that doesn't allow you to develop yourself. And I would say that the people that are living on disability or paying their bills with the money they get in compensation for their disability, that's just one thing taking care of another. It doesn't stop you from being somebody who could still grow, could still become more valuable. It's not a life sentence, right? Aaron Saxa says, man, the stream is hitting hard today. I think I needed this. Even though it's for men, it speaks to me. Everything you've said so far is what I'm feeling. Thank you, Jim. You're very welcome. And it's not just for men. It's that men are usually the only ones that fucking listen to me. Speaking of which, here's my wife. How's that for timing? What's up, baby? All right. Jamie, what's up, my man? He says some people are dead weight, but the addicts are the worst, especially considering that some of them are good people until the addiction takes over, and it always does. You watch any zombie movie, and everybody knows once they turned into a zombie, they got to go. And I'm not a big believer in the merits of compassion in a universal sense. I think, for the nurturers of a tribe, it's very important that they have this irrational level of care for others. When we talk about, a mother's unconditional love for her child, unconditional love at some point is completely illogical. But I would also venture to say that if we didn't have that unconditional love in the nurturers of our species, we wouldn't be here this day. Right? Sometimes, we look at mothers who take care of their children at great expense and risk to themselves. Humanity needed that. It still does. But as far as like people who make conscious decisions to partake in things that makes them nothing but a threat to society, a threat to the tribe, it's like, yeah, those are zombies in my opinion. Right. And I have a very discompassionate position on a lot of, how I feel we should deal with drug addicts. It's either fix yourself or good luck, but it's not my job to mama bear people who have made the decisions that left them in those dire straits to begin with, right? Corey says, if I trace ancestry back far enough, they were fighting to survive, living on the edge of ice sheets, just barely old enough to have children and die young. It was a brutal journey to get us here. Absolutely right. And there's an exchange that occurs, I think, and this is more of my take on this, that there are some things that we will not be able to do as a society if we do not specialize to some extent. If we do not allow what do the scientists do? The scientists push the edge of our knowledge and look to explore and give us more control over our environment. What do the artists do? The artists keep us from being bound by a literal relationship with our circumstances. Artists keep us from allowing these very limited box-like stories that we tell ourselves from taking over society at large. Artists keep us thinking past our circumstances, keeps us moving, in other words. They can look at things and offer perspectives that most people who don't have those gifts can't, and we all collectively benefit from it. So there are these aspects and elements of society that will keep us moving in a direction. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't look at what gave us the opportunity to have these specialized individuals. Right? Maybe these were unique aspects to individuals way back when, but now we have full-on specialists in these societies. And I think there is a benefit to that, but we have to understand what's the cost of it. The cost of it sometimes is the very situation or the nature of this talk in general, that we have a lot of people that are walking around thinking it's okay to be weak. I saw a video recently. One of my guys sent it to me, and it was supposedly I don't really, I think it's fully possible that it said a men's event that cost $10,000 to attend. And it was like a hot spring, and there were a bunch of men like in their bathing suits in the hot spring. And they were like one guy was floating, they were like partnered up, and one guy would be floating and the other guy would be holding him. And they were all like fucking apples in a barrel, like just fucking tightly together. And like they were crying and they were like doing all these like just emotional shit. The whole thing just seemed gay to me. But it's like, would somebody in this society do that? Yeah, absolutely. Of course they would. Well, isn't it bad to do that? Is it like understand like what's bad and what isn't bad? We have to understand what is the criteria for bad and good that we're using? Because, you could be a musician and, I think it was there in the 80s where it started that whole like, is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it like, you have Boy George who had that, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. My mind is fucking up on me, but androgynous, right? That androgynous, who am I? What am I? Like blurring the lines. And it was different. It was unique. It was whatever. But now, not only, never mind the transistors and all of those people, but now you have regular men who are painting their nails. And there's nothing gay about it. No, pretty soon it won't be gay for a man to have sex with another man. It's like, no, he was just, they were exploring their friendship. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? Why is that even possible? How do these things devolve to these deviant levels? It's because there's no consequence. There's nothing pushing back against it. Remember, it's the heat that the hand feels that tells it to not touch the hot stove. If you remove the heat and the damage that the heat causes, why do we not touch the hot stove moving forward? I don't even need to place any value judgment, although I think everybody here understands what my value judgment would be. But to take the more analytical perspective, it's like, yeah, this is how that happens. You remove consequence. Well, of course they're going to do the things that no longer have consequence. They didn't do them before because there was a consequence. We actually believe in not doing certain things because we were raised in a culture that experienced consequence for doing them. So that is the cultural position that we share and put forward. I was going to say some stupid shit. I'm just going to move on. Cherry Vibe says, I once quit cigarettes cold turkey. At the time, I was smoking north of a pack a day. I climbed that ladder pretty fast. It's funny. My father smoked cigarettes. He was in Vietnam. Everybody, there was a time just everybody smoked cigarettes from where he was from. And he made that decision too. My mother said he quit cold turkey just the same. There are so many people who will say, well, you can't quit cigarettes cold turkey. Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, but what are the chances? Oh, that's a different conversation. That's not what you said. You said you couldn't. Yeah, but the probability is so low. It's like that Dumb and Dumber. So you say I got a chance. You have to understand when we're telling yourself stories, that needs to be the perspective. You need to be able to tell yourself, you know what, if it's possible, why not me? At least tell yourself the story that supports that. Because as soon as you say, there's no way I'm going to be able to quit, in one day or just make a decision and not quit. Like, who are you trying to impress that you're so willing to write such a terrible story? Like, do you feel like you look smarter or you look like you got your shit together more if you don't talk with hope and ambition, and an expectation of success in your brain? Like, are you supposed to, be this too cool for school? I'm never going to say I could do that because what winds up happening is I just see it as scared. You're being fearful. You don't want to fail. You don't want people to see you fail. You think if you fail in front of people, they won't think you're perfect anymore. So much of how we conduct ourselves is because of the influence of other people. Well, here is a thing. That was very functional when everybody around you survived more effectively if you survived more effectively. When your win was their win. When your loss was their loss. At that time, or with those people, it would make sense to want to act honorably and with a certain level of approval amongst those people. But right now, that does not exist at a societal level. That only exists at a tribal level. There are people in my life I do not want to let down. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of. I don't want to shame. But that's not everybody. I don't give a fuck what the majority of society thinks about me. Those people don't matter to me. But there are people that do matter. And I don't want to let those people down. I don't want to embarrass them. I make the joke, but there are a lot of people in my past who have no idea how lucky they are that I have children. Because an earlier version of me would have conducted myself a lot differently in a lot of these conflicts I've had with people over the years. But that's why people are there. That's why the children are there. That's why the tribe is there. Because who I was when I was much younger was a lesser version of me. So having these people that I have to be accountable for, or to rather, like these are the people that keep me on mission when my current state is dragging me off of it. Right? Charitavav writes, do you agree that the disrespect for our warrior class is a show of weakness? Have we as a society truly given up on drawing strength from tradition? Well, those are literally two questions, but also they go in different directions. The first one, do I think that our disrespect for the warrior class is a show of weakness? I would say it's a show of ignorance, really. I think earlier, was it this talk or another talk I was having earlier? Anyway, I was talking about vegans, right? And how vegans will feed their not all of them, but there have been vegans who have decided that their dogs are going to be vegan too. And the dogs develop all of these deficiency disorders and diseases because of this, low protein vegan diet. And I don't think that these people don't love their dogs. I don't think that these people want to make their dogs suffer. I think these people are just so ignorant and delusional that they make mistakes. And in that case, I would say there's more of a consequence than most people today. So there's a difference between not agreeing with the war in Vietnam and being anti-military and being anti-violence. These are all different positions. But a lot of these things tend to just get broad swathed over. You ask somebody who's against violence, against this, against that, like you go to his house and you slap him up in his living room. He's going to want to call the cops. Why? Because those are the people who are going to bring the violence that he doesn't have, right? Like weak people calling the cops, not that only weak people call the cops, but weak people calling the cops is like somebody with no food calling for fucking a pizza pie to get delivered. It's like, I don't have it here. I got to call somebody to bring it to me. Well, that's what calling the cops is for a weak individual who's never equipped his life with violence, the ability to do violence. So I think when you look at society, there are a lot of people who they don't have a relationship with the violence that has existed since the dawn of man that will continue existing until our extinction. And there are always going to be people who just look at the military and go, why do we need guns? I don't understand. Why do you need a gun? What are you scared of? Right? There are these people that they exist, and I get it. Obviously, I don't agree with their position, but I understand how they get to think like that. About 10 years ago, I had a debate with this guy on Facebook. I spoke about him before. I went to high school with him. And he was a bit of an asshole in high school, but he was like a loser. No, not a loser, more like a nerd that I always had this soft spot for nerds. I always felt like, even if they were standoffish, it was because that was their defense mechanism because people always picked on them. So I always tried to be cool with this guy. I was cooler with him than he was with me. But, you see somebody on Facebook and it's like, oh, yeah, hey, I remember you. And I had said, I'd made some post about being armed and about, a man's responsibility to do violence to protect his family. And this guy, pushed back against it. He and his wife had just had a son. The son was around a year old at the time of this. And he came after me, and it was talking about like me back in high school. Like, holy shit, this guy thought I was an asshole back then. I was trying to be nice to him, like whatever. But then his wife chimed in and said something like, you're unsafe around children. You shouldn't be legally allowed to be around children. Because I thought that a man should, carry a firearm and be ready to do violence to protect his family. And I asked her, the hypothetical, in the context or during the course of this debate, I guess, this Facebook argument, I said, if you were with your son in your home and an intruder broke in, brandishing a knife, and said, I'm going to put this knife in the middle of your son's chest, and proceeded to walk towards your son, and there was a shotgun that you could pick up and shoot him, would you shoot him? Now, mind you, I wasn't putting this hypothetical out to shame her as being a crazy person. It was really just to establish the building blocks of how somebody looks to deal with, the potential threat of violence done by other people. But no, she threw me a curveball. She said, absolutely not. I would never shoot this guy. So I'm like, so you'd let this guy kill your son before protecting him? And she said, well, at least I would something like take solace in knowing that my son died without ever becoming a violent piece of shit like you. And it's like, okay, all right. Agree to disagree. Right? And at that point, it's like, what the fuck do you tell that person? But I understand, maybe not to the level that I do now, but this society breeds people like that. And they're allowed to have those opinions, right? They're afforded those opinions because we don't ask them to stay connected to the universals, the things that I advocate for. We don't require that of people. We just ask that they follow the laws, they pay their taxes. Like we ask them to play in the aquarium. Just do the things we need you to do in the aquarium, and the aquarium will keep giving you the resources that you've earned by the aquarium's rules. Right? There are places of the country you can go. You can't fish. You can't collect rainwater, like on your own property. If you get solar panels, you have to be plugged into the municipality so that they could have access to the power. Like these are all things that are in place to stop us from becoming self-sufficient. By the way, of course those things are illegal. Of course they're doing that. right? I'm somebody that wrote a book on tribe. I'm currently writing or producing another program called Forging a Tribe that deals very intimately with these dynamics. Of course, they have to stop people from unplugging and not relying on everything. Everything goes to shit. What's going to happen to the tax base if people stop generating money and just start making their own food and growing their own shit and not needing anything more? What happens if people opt out of the consumerism model? Of course, everything falls down. So again, it's not like I don't understand it. I don't agree with it, obviously, but it's not like I don't understand it. And I would offer that at a minimum, that needs to be the relationship. We can't just act like, well, it shouldn't be like that. It's always going to be like that. There's a level of size in a tribe where the personal relationships are trumped by the political motivations of individuals and groups within the tribe. That is inevitable. It has always been, it will always be. Anything that you could generate before that devolving of the fabric of a group happens is just an arc of time. It is always going to happen. These things are cyclical. It is unavoidable, right? So we just shouldn't act surprised when weak people act weakly, right? My man Ryan, what up? So he says yo, but he's living in Mexico. So that's I. It's like me. Corey says tribe is mandatory for survival. Lone wolves better find a pack because there's just too much to do in a day. Any individual who has the ability to sustain through hard times will be targeted. And it's the formula that works. The nuclear family, the idea of a man, a father, a mother, and children, like this is a naturally designed unit. There needn't to be any sort of political controversy over saying that, yeah, it's going to be better if there's a man, woman, and children, right? There are gay guys having children now. There are lesbians having children now. Oh, well, two gay men could raise a child. Well, yeah, they could raise a child. But you know what they're never going to be able to do? Be a mother. Yeah, but I could, you could say all you want that, not having a mother there is no big deal, but you don't know that. And all I know is since the beginning of man, there's always been a mother. It's not that there aren't exceptions, obviously, but as usual, these deviant political identities, and I say deviant in terms of statistical distribution, not in terms of morality, but with them, it's also immoral. Right? Let me just say that. But what winds up happening is you have these individuals who want to put forth a model that they have a logical argument for, and they think that their logical argument can ever match the vetted historical proof of something. This is a better way to do it. Well, this way works. Yeah, but this way works better. Well, you don't know that. If anything, you're going to run the experiment, right? That's science and shit. But to say that, this is the same thing, well, that's not true. It's different. Two women raising a boy, it's different than a man and a woman raising a boy. And the argument for two women raising a boy is not that some men do a terrible job of raising boys. You could have that argument. If I was a lesbian looking to raise a son, like that would be the argument I would take because it might fare better in a debate with somebody, but I'm not interested in having these debates. It's a waste of my time. They know that the son's going to be better off with a male role model. And if they don't know that, it's not my job to teach it to them. Can't save everybody, Holy shit, we're over an hour. Guys got me fired up. Let's end it there. Let me be the responsible business person. If you are not getting my email, make sure you go to masterjim.com/email. It's free. I send it every day. Haven't missed a day in a couple of years now. If you're not getting them and you're supposed to, it might be going in your spam box. Just check there. Just save the email as a contact so it bypasses any of your email platform's filters. Aside from that, I will be here next week. Great talk today. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And as always, brothers and sisters, pressure to power.